One of the questions I get asked quite often is people saying they know that we should be praying for our enemies and they know that we should forgive our enemies. But should we really be praying for the ANC, considering what they're doing to this country, considering their actions? Look, I get it. I get it as Christians, and I see your frustration. Believe me, I see it in the comments. As Christians, it's sometimes hard. I will admit, I'll be the first to admit, I have this part of me, right, that sees the ANC, and I see someone like Cyril Ramaphosa, someone like Paul Mashatile, and I imagine in my mind's eye when we finally mete out justice to these men, and I believe that they deserve nothing short of the death penalty for the treason that they have committed upon this nation and upon the people of this nation. And I sort of look at them, and they fill me with absolute anger, and I just think to myself, why? Why should I pray for these guys? Why should they get mercy? Why should they get grace? Why would God forgive them? For they are wicked, they are evil, they're arrogant. They have this guile, this gall, and this arrogance to literally destroy this country, but then at the same time blame it on everyone else, right? Or at least blame it on the Afrikaner, blame it on me, blame it on you. Their arrogance is just, it drips from them. Whenever I hear Fikile Himbalula speak about how, we're just standing in the path of their progress, I want to scream at him. And then I'm reminded of something. I'm reminded of myself. I'm reminded of my own life. I'm reminded of who I was. You see, so often, especially in most of the churches in this country, at least most of the churches that I have ever been in, bar the one that I'm in now and a couple that I've discovered along the way, and I've only been with God in my walk with Jesus really just under 2 years now. But most churches here in South Africa preach what I like to call the gospel of love. Now, it is true. The gospel is a love story, and the gospel really is the account of God's love. But the gospel that most churches in South Africa preach is the gospel that God so loved the world. He so loved you that he sent Jesus, his only son, to die for you because he loves you, and he loves you just the way you are. And that's a lie. That is a bold-faced lie. God does love you, but God did not send Jesus Christ to die because he loves us. That's not the whole story. You see, for you to truly understand the Gospels, you have to realize that Jesus didn't just come down as a man, spend like a couple of hours on this earth, climb on the cross, and then died, because that would have been sufficient if all that was required was Jesus dying. That was not the point. The point of Jesus and why Jesus had to come as a babe, spend most of his life teaching and preaching, at least all of his adult life was spent teaching and preaching. And if you actually go through the Gospels and you read Jesus' story right up until the last chapters where Jesus finally gets crucified, you will find that among that, right, is Jesus telling us why he came to die for us. You see, because the gospel isn't just Jesus dying, it's also why it was necessary. It was necessary because of you and I, because we are so defiled, we are so evil and wicked within ourselves, our works are so sinful that there was no other way for us to achieve grace and mercy. We were so separated from God that unless God made that sacrifice, unless God took those sins upon himself and literally made Jesus sin for us, there would have been no way for you and I to ever go to God, for you and I to ever have a relationship with him. One of the greatest sort of anecdotes I've ever heard of this, or one of the greatest examples or explanations I've ever heard of this, is before you accept Jesus, you are merely a creation of God. You are just like everything else, like a tree, like a blade of grass. You're just a creation. But then when you accept Jesus, in that moment, You become family of God. You're no longer just a creation of God. You are now family. You are made sons and daughters of the Most High through Jesus that bought you for a price. And his story is so incredible because on the one hand, you have all of these sinners and it shows us our wickedness and our wicked minds and thoughts and the way we are. And then on the other, you have these other two groups in his story. That is the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And their sin is actually the worst of them all because it is their sin that ultimately crucifies Jesus. It is the sin of arrogance. You see, and so when I look at the ANC and I think to myself, but I can't pray for these guys. They're evil and wicked. That's arrogance speaking. See, and arrogance is dangerous because it's the one sin that we don't notice in ourselves. It's the sin that unless someone points it out to us, we will never know that we are arrogant. And yet we so often are. But that is arrogance because when I think of my own life, just under 2 years ago, I was wicked beyond belief. I was addicted to pornography. I was a liar. I was a manipulator. I was a cheat. I would have said anything to get my way no matter what it is. I would have hurt anyone that I could get. If I felt like I could hurt this person and get my way and get some benefit out of it, I would have done it, right? I had no moral framework. I had no principles whatsoever. And yet, last year, 2024, around about March, I don't have a specific date or day, I just know it was around March, God reached down from heaven, wrapped his hand around me and said, "My grace is sufficient for you." And he brought me into his family and I was saved. If I could be saved, then I have to believe that Paul Mashatile, Cyril Ramaphosa, and Fakil Mbulula can also be saved because God's grace is sufficient. If it was up to me, if I had to at least live my life to be not that evil in order to achieve that salvation, I would not have had that salvation. Now, does that mean that we somehow just have to accept it? We have to be like, hey, you know what, guys, we'll just pray for you and we won't do anything about it. Let it not be so. As Paul said to, I think it was the Romans, when he said, what then? Shall we sin so that grace may abound? Let it not be. Let it not be. We are absolutely called upon this world not to remain quiet when evil is taking place. We are meant to judge evil. I quickly want to show you guys this. One of the greatest lies told to Christians at all times is this idea of do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. And they say, don't judge. As a Christian, you can't judge. You have to accept everyone. Show the love of Jesus to every single person. But no one ever reads further. Because when you read further, Jesus explains to you that you should judge. But how are you supposed to judge? Because the very next verse says, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? What is Jesus saying? Do not judge self-righteously. Paul himself says, judge and learn how to judge well, for one day we will judge angels. You, me, we, the Christians, we will judge angels. That's what Paul says. So do we just keep quiet? Do we just stand back and let the ANC practice what they do? Because, hey, we're Christians. We're just supposed to pray for them. Let it not be. We are on this world to be defenders of his truth, to fight for his gospel. And if that means that we go to war, then so be it. We will not start that war, but we certainly will not sit back. We will not sit by idly and watch the evil be enacted by people like the ANC, people like Ramaphosa, and people like Paul Mashatile. When we see their evil, we call it out. We fight back. We put a stop to it because we are called to do so. That is our charge. But then we also pray for them. We pray that before it reaches that point, before it reaches a point of no return, they find Jesus. They give their hearts to Christ and they become men of moral stature, men who will lead this country to Christ. Those are my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that answered a lot of the questions that some of you may have around at least the way that I read things. If you have a different opinion, or maybe you agree with me, but you thought I left something out, please leave it in the comment section down below. As always, if you think more people should see what I do, please consider hitting the like button, hitting that subscribe button, and sharing this video with as many people as possible. As always, a massive shout out and thank you to all of the patrons as well as the YouTube channel members. To become a patron, link in the description down below, or join button right below this video. Be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.